episode, I speak to Mrs. Elizabeth Mary Okelo, an alumni of the prestigious Alliance Girls High School. Mary became the first woman bank manager in Kenya in 1967. In 2003, she received the Mwaura of the Order of the Burning Spear, a Kenyan presidential award for her contribution to education. Very warm welcome to you, Mary Okelo, to the Gems and Nuggets podcast, and we are very delighted to have you on this show. So I'll go straight into it and ask you, when I told some of my friends that I was going to be interviewing you, first of all, they were they're really looking forward to listening to this conversation, but they were very surprised that you started out in banking. You know, maybe because I'm in the banking industry, I've known you to be a pioneer because you were the first woman bank manager in Kenya. You were the founder, member, and first chairman of Kenya Women's Finance Trust. You have been a Women's World Banking regional representative. You've been vice president, Women's World Banking, and a member of the External Consultative Gender Committee of the World Bank. I mean, you have had many firsts in an industry that even until today has been seen to be mainly a male-dominated industry. Mary, how has that journey been for you?
Well, first, let me start by thanking you for inviting me to your show and also to congratulate you on being a senior woman in banking, because that has always been my passion, to see women rise up. So I'm very, very happy that I'm talking to a very senior woman in the banking industry. Congratulations, and I'm really delighted.
Thank you.
My journey has been both challenging and gratifying. As you have said, banking is still male dominated. And when I first joined the bank as a first woman manager, it was not very easy. I was not well received. I was sometimes rejected. I remember when I was first appointed sub-manager to a branch in Nairobi. When I arrived at my new post, the Mzungu I was taking over from refused to hand over to me. And I had to go back to head office to seek their intervention. It was humiliating, it was embarrassing, but I knew that was going to be the thing. So I took it with grace. And after the intervention of the head office, he reluctantly left the office for me. So that meant I was taking over without proper handing over. And you know how it is, if you take over a job without the predecessor showing you the ropes, it becomes very bumpy and difficult to do. So that was the beginning. And then clients were not used to women managers. So sometimes bank clients and ask, where is the manager? And I say, I am the manager. And of course, they don't believe you are. So you have an awkward moment whereby you are trying to be very polite, but at the same time, you're feeling inside it's really difficult that here you are, you're going to serve somebody and he's refusing to accept that you are competent enough to give him the service he needs. So it was not easy. Also, some staff members didn't know how to react to a woman manager because they were not used to having managers, women managers in charge, women giving them orders and being in charge. So it was not very easy at that time. But I think the most difficult part was that if you don't have anybody to look up to, somebody who has gone through what you are going through so that they can give you some guidelines, they can show you where the dangers are, they show you how to move. It's very difficult because you are more or less on your own. men were experiencing different things. So it was not easy. It's like you are alone on a lonely road.
I'm listening to you, and we take it for granted what it would have meant to have been a senior manager and leader at that time. What kept you grounded? What kept you going and saying, you know what, I'm going to succeed despite the challenges?
One, I knew if I failed, I will have failed all the women who are aspiring to come into banking. So that was one motivation that I had to do it for the sake of other women who are interested in banking. Because if I failed, they will always point at me. But I was also passionate about what I was doing. I grew up in a family where we were told everything is possible. I am a Christian and I read Philippians where everything is possible with God. So I knew despite the challenges, I could make it. I also was fortunate. I knew a lady, Michaela was. She was the first woman to have her company on Wall Street in New York. So that one also gave me some motivation. I said, if she has done it in Wall Street, maybe I can do it here in Barclays. But it wasn't very easy, I must say. But I must also say I was lucky. I had some people who supported me. I had a managing director of the bank, Mr. T.D. Miles, who was supportive. And that made it a bit easier for me. But not all of the people in the bank were supportive. But he was, and that was good. And also, I grew up in a family where my parents, my father, my brothers were supportive. They treated both men and women as equals. So I didn't have falling back on their, encouragement was useful.
Yeah, it goes to show how much men are allies in our careers. You know, our fathers, our brothers, our spouses, they're all very important in just giving us the support for us to be able to make those strides. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes,
So,
yes, and my husband was also very supportive, and that made a lot of difference.
speaking of your husband, actually, you know, most people associate you with the Makini group of schools, which I know you began with your late husband some 43 years ago. And we all know Makini to be one of the top chains of private schools in the country, which excelled both in academic and in co-curricular activities. Why did you decide to pivot from banking to the education sector?
Well, there are many reasons why. First, I love children and I enjoy working with children. Children teach me a lot. Children are very transparent, and being around them is very energizing. And I love nurturing children because it's like seeing a flower open. So that was a big motivation for me to go into the education sector. But let me say, in 1978, there were many things that were happening in the country. First, the population growth was very high. Kenya's growth was at 5%, I think one of the highest in the country, in the world at that time. So we were producing a lot of children, and there weren't enough schools to cater for the children that were coming up. And therefore, classrooms, we were having large classrooms, maybe 70 children per teacher. So the ratio was very high. Consequently, the standards of the quality of education was going down. At the same time, there was a rising middle class who are looking for quality education for their children. So those factors contributed to the need to establish schools that could cater for the middle class that could provide quality education, but also just to support our governments because they couldn't produce and they could not build enough classrooms for the number of children that were going up. So it was a number of factors. And another one, which may not be very obvious, that one of my daughter, Claire, who is currently doing her PhD at Oxford University, when she was young, she was a very avid reader. And she was going through books at a very fast rate. And we looked and we thought maybe a child like her needed a kind of school that could cater for her accelerated learning. So at first, actually, we were looking for starting a school for gifted and talented children, children who are not normally catered for in normal schools, children who have special needs because they go at a very fast rate. But we soon realized that that required a lot of resources. It required trained teachers, and we were not able to do that. So then we decided just to start a normal school, but with special emphasis to children who have special needs, especially those who are very bright and need to be given work more than the others and given more attention. So that's how we started the McKinney schools, a normal school, but with special attention to people with special needs. Yeah.
Fantastic, and I must say I've been a student at McKinney College, doing my public relations. Yes, so your dream not only went on from primary school to high school. Some of us had been beneficiaries in in a way that you probably had not even envisioned at the very start. So thank you, I must say that.
I'm glad that you're one of us. Thank you.
So. One question that I think is even personal, and as I listen to you, I can relate with you so much because you founded the Barclays Bank Women's Association, which aimed to mentor and support women to attain managerial positions and encourage members to sensitize other women at large on banking policies. The association was so successful in lobbying the bank to change its policies to make credit accessible to women. Looking back, have you achieved what you set out to do for women? And maybe what more could be done?
Well, to a large extent we have, but there is a lot more still to be done. At least we achieved, now we have many women managers in banks. Look at yourself. You're one of them. You may not be in Barclays, but at least we have many, many women managers. We also have women directors and members of bank boards. I must say I'm very proud of ABSA, which has 50% of their board members as women. So to me, that's a big achievement that we have women managers, we have women directors, and when you have women on boards, you know that they are going to be sensitive to issues pertaining to women. So when they are discussing policies, those policies will be favorable to women. We also managed to get, especially when the laws relating to women were revised, to get women to access banking facilities or borrow without the need to have a male guarantor. You know, before women couldn't borrow or even open accounts without their male, a man to guarantee or to be there. So I think the fact that women can access banking facilities to me is a big achievement. The fact that women have been promoted. You see, at the time I went there, I was in the bank. When I first joined, women were only clerks, cashiers, figures, You know, there were no women managers. So the
Yeah.
fact that we have many women managers is a big achievement.
Mm. Completely agree, and I agree that
Yeah,
making policies important for women to reach credit is very important, and especially without guarantors is something that was very important in that time and even today.
yeah, and again, having the laws revised so that women are not barred because of laws is a big achievement. But what is not happening, or what hasn't happened, is the implementation of two-third gender rule, which I think every woman in Kenya should fight for so that it can be implemented. Because if it does, it will make a lot of difference to the way we participate in national building.
Thank you. So I want to now change and move us to the today's topic, which is learn, lead, and leave a legacy. Now, having you on this show was, looking and reading all about you, we know you're a game changer. You joined the banking industry when women were discriminated against. You attained high levels in the banking world. You have been an effective policy changer. But what does it take? You're challenging us, the women of today. What does it take to be an effective and adaptable leader in this changing world?
I think you have always to be sensitive to what is happening in your environment and look at things that can be improved. But as a woman, you have always to be conscious and look at what is happening to other women. Are there things that we can do to improve their lot? Are there things we can do to support them? And so for me, it is things like just supporting one another, mentoring one another. If you have two positions and you have two people who are equal, a man and a woman, give it to the woman, because the chances of her getting a position are less than the man who will be supported wherever they go by other men. So I think we have just to take it upon ourselves as women that it is our duty wherever we go to support women. We have to try and mentor the young ones. We have to make them aware that they cannot succeed alone, that as women, we are tied together and we have to work together, support one another, hold ladders for each other so that we can climb up together.
I really like that. Hold ladders together. But Mary, I think one of the reasons that we women face is what is called the imposter syndrome, having the doubt, self-doubt, that maybe I'm not good enough for this role, and I'll only apply for the role when I feel that I'm 100% ready for the role. So the question I have for you is, have you ever faced the imposter syndrome, and what did you do to get out of it?
Well, sometimes we all do, but I think that if you focus on what you want and you can do all things with Christ who enables you, I think so long as we believe that there is a higher power than us that will always enable us to do things, then it is easier to focus on on the things we need to do rather than on ourselves. If you focus on yourself, sometimes you can see so many things that may hinder you. Because if you focus on yourself, for example, you say, oh, I'm a married woman, I can't do this, I'm a this. But if you focus on what you are trying to do, you will find ways of doing it. I don't know whether I'm answering your question.
Yes, they are. But I'd like to really hear from you a time when you faced the imposter syndrome. If you can recall a time that you didn't put up your hand and maybe you needed encouragement so that you could finally do it.
Yes, sometimes when you are alone in say in a board meeting and everybody saying the same thing, sometimes you wonder whether, so, yeah, you can have a fleeting moment where you say, are they going to listen?
Yeah.
But again, you can't you can't stay there too long. You have to pick up yourself and say, whether they listen or not, I will still put my point across. Doubts come in. I think as human beings, sometimes we have, you may be trying to jump across a bridge and you wonder, am I going to make it? Sometimes we are crippled by doubts, but the point is not to allow yourself to be crippled, but to find a way of overcoming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know many of the women listening and can relate with being the only woman in a room and listening to the same voices, saying the same thing, and wondering,
Yes.
is this a good moment to actually make a different view? Yet, actually, we believe diversity and inclusion is important because that other voice brings a different viewpoint that must be implemented. So, when you look at your illustrious career, what is the one thing you wish you had known earlier on?
Yeah, that women are not going to be given power, that they have to fight for it. I thought so long as we were delivering, the world will just open doors for us. But I realized that we have to struggle we have to fight for that power. We have to fight for that leadership, just be given to us.
That's such a poignant point around that it's not only what you do that will give you there's more than just delivery. And it may mean having to involve, to have different conversations. It may mean very many things. What are some of the things that you had to do to gain power? Because Mary, you were considered a troublemaker in your time, even starting those policies. But when you advocated for women employees to have greater professional participation at work, what is the advice you have for us younger women as we continue to climb the ladder to ensure that also men do not feel like they're being, put aside, that we are all going into this together?
First of all, you have to, you stand your ground. And if you're doing the right thing, irrespective of the challenges, remain focused and determined to achieve your goal.
Thank you.
But you have to have a strategy. Look at the way you can make allies with men who can support your cause. Because sometimes you need them. You need men to help you achieve your goals.
Fantastic. I really like that point. So I'm gonna do what I call "What's your take on the show," which is I'll read just a few statements and I want just a quick response to the statement. So the first statement I have is, leadership is based on position and formal authority. What's your take?
It doesn't. It depends on how you influence people and the way that you do things.
I don't have a lot of leadership experience and therefore will not take up a position.
That is rubbish. You learn as you go along.
I really like that response, I must say. Appearances matter.
You know it. You can't arrive at your place of work dressed just anyhow, isn't it? Because people who look at you, yes, you have to look the position.
True.
That's why during my time, we had to wear, suits. We had to wear. Okay, things are changing now, but the way you appear, because it's when you are reading. If you are looking at a person, the first thing you see is the appearance, isn't it?
True.
And that determines how you relate to that person.
That is true. I bring up this topic of appearance because especially in this era, people, and especially now that you are working, many of us are working from home. There's that assumption that, you know what, no one really needs to know how I look, and it's what I have in my head or how I speak that will speak for me. But it's great to hear from you that even now, and perhaps even more importantly now, appearances do matter.
Even if we are working from home and you start walking around in your night dress, would you feel like you are really working?
No. Yeah. It helps you to
Yeah.
just demarcate your time and your space. I completely agree with you. So now that you've taken us through a little bit about, a lot about what you have done and how you got to where you are, what is the one leadership book or books you've recommended most or given as a gift, and why?
You know, Peter Drucker and all those people. Different. I have been given books on leadership with different, like who? John. What is the one in
John
the
C.
Christian
Maxwell?
one?
John C. Maxwell?
Yeah, John Mark. Yes, for example, if you are dealing with Christian people, they always refer to his books. And management, Drucker has always been. You know, there are many different ones and different at different times. And but right now, I'm not. I read books. I have been reading. I'm still reading. I'm reading Phoebe Asio's book. And although it may not be a leadership entitled leadership, but you can see there, for example, how they started the Maendeleo ya Wanawake and the things they did, how Phoebe was the first woman superintendent in the prisons. So you can read leadership there. I'm also reading the book on Ellen, the former president of
Liberia?
Yes. So it may not be, they may not be titled leadership, but you can see leadership principles there being applied. So when you ask me which leadership book, it's difficult to say. I'm also reading the former president of Mauritius, Dr. Professor Amina Grib. It's so leadership comes in different ways.
Actually, those books that you have mentioned, especially biographies, because a book like From Phoebe and the former and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf will ultimately speak to leadership because it's about their journey and their mistakes. So it is. I do consider those books as leadership books, and it's great to hear. I'll be honest with you, I only got to know about the former president of Mauritius being a woman because of President Suluhu, and knowing how many African leaders have been there. So it's great to hear that there's even a book, so I'll look out for it. So thank you so much for those. And even Phoebe's a Kenyan who has did phenomenal things. And again, you're the first person to ever mention that book, so I'm really going to look out for it. Thank you so much for it.
No, and we should encourage our young women to look and read those books just to see the challenges these women overcame in their professional lives.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So in the last 5 years, what new behavior or habit has most improved your life?
Being more prayerful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think meditating and trying to remove clutter from my life. And trying to separate important and non-important things and pursuing more important and lasting things. But also just to look and reflect on life. Because when you are very active, sometimes we are just acting, doing things, doing, and not having enough time to reflect. And but I'm learning to enjoy life. Just listening to the birds singing, watching the sunrise and the sunset and things like that, which when you are very busy in an office, you hardly have time to. So I think learning to be in tune with nature has been a very gratifying experience.
Those are all excellent points. And I must tell you, Mary, just it's almost the same responses I get, whether a woman, especially for most women over 40, the issue, and especially because of COVID, prayer and meditation has been almost everyone's go-to space. Reflection is my favorite word because you're right. There was so much time of doing. You didn't have time to breathe and take it in. And being in tune with nature is, I like to walk in Karura. I really struggle, and I try, even if I don't go there, I go there even with one friend just to catch up, so I can almost be in tune with nature and catch up with a friend and walk, because that's the other thing, that exercise needs to be part of the regime. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for women listening in to you and hearing that it's the same things that we will need, and decluttering need to work on. So thank you for that. Now, if you could have brunch with 3 people, dead or alive, whom would you choose and why?
My husband, my parents, and my family, and my best friend.
How would that conversation sound like?
Our relationship with God, what we have done for other people, what we can still do to uplift other people and ourselves, and our contribution, because we are here to also make life better. So just to reflect on whether we are doing anything to add to other people's lives, to add to our lives, and whether we are living our purpose, because everybody here has, we were created for a purpose. And are we achieving that? Are we living our purpose? Because at the end of the day, we will be accountable to our Maker. He gave us gifts, He gave us certain things to use. Will we be able to account to Him and say, yes, I used the talent you gave me and I multiplied it?
Thank you very much. The parable of the talents is one of my favorite parables. And I quote it often. In fact, Eunice, my sister, she must think that you and I have spoken before, because I always think that with all the talents I was given, will I go back to my Maker and say, thank you, Father, these are the X that you gave me, and I return X squared back to you. That's my fear. That's actually my fear, that I make sure that I know these are the things that I was given, and I must return them back. So as we come to the end, Mary, and as you said in the beginning, I should, time, and I'm very particular about time. I want to give you this few minutes to do your parting shot to our audience. Our audience is typically women from 35 to about 45. They're mostly corporate. We have listeners from Kenya, but actually Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, and the diasporans living in the UK and the US. So it would be good to hear just a parting shot from you about legacy.
Well, we all live our legacy. Every day we are creating a legacy by the way we live, by what we do, by the way we impact people around us, and through our contribution to humanity. We have to leave something behind. I just said we are here for a purpose, and therefore we must use that opportunity we have to leave something behind that people, we have to impact people's lives. We have to do something that God will indeed say, you use the talents I give you to help people. For me, it's always to try and, support other people, to help people go up wherever we can, and especially women. Because when you are in a position to help somebody, do so, and especially women, because if we don't support one another, we lose the opportunity of raising us as a gender.
I've heard you speak. I've just thought of one question, and I remember thinking about it when it happened, which is succession. Not many companies, family businesses, think through succession. And you did what was a game-changing thing by letting go of Makini. I'll call it letting go of Makini. That I can only imagine what that was for you. But what drove you to think, you know what, this is time, and now it's time to hand over to someone else to take it over?
Well, the school was over for 40 years. And after 40 years, you need a change. You need to inject new energy, new thinking. And that's what we did. Found that it was time to move on. I am not young. If I ran Makini for 40 years, I must be. Women don't talk about their age, but I'm not young. So you reach a point. No, once you have done your part, you move on. And when you start a business, you have to start it with a succession plan in mind, so that as you go, you are looking at where am I going to leave this institution or this business. We all come to an end somewhere, so it is better you move out when you can, rather than go to the grave with it. Because if you hand over, then you have a chance of sharing some of your insights with the person who takes over. But if you don't have a successor, it can cause problems. So I'm very happy and I'm grateful to God that we had the opportunity to hand over to somebody else to move it to another level.
Wow, that is really formidable of you, and forward-thinking, foresight, all the visionary that comes along with that word. So we really appreciate you, Mary, for the wonderful strides that you have made in life and for leaving such a beautiful legacy. I'm honored to have met Joseph and and Patricia. And for all that they have done as an example, because also legacy is about who you leave behind, and they speak to your vision. Family business being very important, running a business, family being very important. So we thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best.
For more details, find us at www.activatewilla.com and on our various social media channels.